Now, as we've been hearing on the program this morning, the province announced a record breaking budget update yesterday. Not necessarily a kind of record you want to break, though. BC's financial deficit now sits at $11.6 billion. That's about $700 million more than the government originally projected. Finance Minister Brenda Bailey says February's budget didn't take into account the loss of the carbon tax. The deficit is set to rise to $12.6 billion by next year. And so for more on this, we're joined by Justin Wiltshire. He's an assistant professor of economics at the University of Victoria. Good morning to you, Justin.
Good morning, Stephen.
Thank you for being with us. Your initial reaction to this deficit, did it come as any surprise to you?
Not all that much of a surprise given how trends have been looking and, what has happened over the last couple of years with respect to the province's credit rating.
And tell me about that. What has happened to the province's credit rating and what impact has that had?
Well, it's been downgraded a couple of times. And, I think more importantly than the downgrades per se is the outlooks are not especially positive. There was the suggestion that further downgrades could occur should the province not sort of right the ship. And I don't think that this update is really doing anything to suggest that we're righting the ship. That's not to say that the province is in dire straits. I don't think we are, but we're not trending in the right direction.
Well, right. And how did we get to where we are now?
It's it's not a straightforward path to get to this point, but just 3, 4 years ago, our operating debt was zeroed out, and now we're seeing very high operating debts. We're seeing capital spending that is actually slightly below what was projected. But really, it seems to me that it is twofold. One, we've got revenues that are not meeting what was projected, and I think that really does suggest when you look below the headline numbers that the projections were really too rosy in many
Yes.
ways. On the other side, we do have spending that may be outstripping what seems reasonable.
And growth has not been anywhere what anybody had been hoping for or accounted for. I mean, when you looked at the BC Conservative platform and what they talked when they talked about the economy, they're projecting growth of more than 5%. Growth has been more like 1.5%.
Yeah, growth has definitely been somewhat, I don't want to say anemic, but it has been below what we would hope to see. I think, that's for a number of reasons. And I think what's been going on south of the border is not one of the main reasons for that, though that's certainly not helping. But especially when you look at the dependence of this province on the real estate sector in general, and what's been happening the last several years, and of course what's happening federally with respect to immigration policy, et cetera.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a lot of reason to really believe that the ship is going to be righted in the next couple of years.
And the deficit is projected to worsen further. I mean, how does the government try to begin to get this under control? I mean, it's easy to say you've got to reduce spending, but then how do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And if I had all of those answers, I'm sure the government would be paying me as a consultant. But I think certainly the spending reviews that are taking place are important. I really would like to see those accelerated. There are a number of programs that I think at least were alluded to by the premier as potentially no longer meeting the moment. I think some of those programs may have never met the moment.
Hmm.
Not to throw it entirely under the bus, but Clean BC has generally been viewed as a failure despite the many billions of dollars it's cost. There are many other programs that could be addressed. But of course, also, and I say as a labor economist, my focus is on more labor markets. I think it's of note that the public sector has grown by about 55% since the NDP took office. There are questions that we do need to ask about whether we really do need to have all of those people working in the public sector in British Columbia, given the size of these deficits and what they're projected to be.
And we do have the BC General Employees Union, of course, in a strike position right now, and setting up pickets in various locations. I mean, that's some pretty hard bargaining when you're talking about trying to get a handle on an inflated public service that is also expecting wage increases right now.
That's right. And to be clear, the public sector has grown faster than the core public service and the BCGU, not exclusively, but does, especially this group that is on strike now. They are largely the public service. There are obviously reasons why they would like to see above inflation general wage increases. I think it is worth noting that employees who have been with the core public service, or at least represented by some of these collective agreements, have been seeing above inflation increases due to their step increases up to the point where they hit about step 5. And for regular employees, that's about 5 years in. They've seen actually very large wage increases over the last 5 years. But for those who have been with the public service for a lot longer than that, they have not been seeing above inflation wage increases. And so it is difficult for them. But at the same time, when you do choose to become a public servant, you are taking on a role that is ultimately responsible to taxpayers. And at this point, especially given that we need to consider things beyond just wage compensation, non-wage compensation like pensions, et cetera, there are reasons for taxpayers to say this may not be reasonable asks from the BCGEU.
Well, right. And Finance Minister Brenda Bailey spoke yesterday about potential job cuts that could be part of a solution to this deficit. I just want you to hear a little bit of what she had to say.
There is work afoot in each ministry to look at reductions, and they're looking at things like, is a particular program landing where they intended it to? Is it getting the results? Is there overlap with any other programming? Are there overlaps? Are there ways to consolidate the work that we do? And some of that work may lead to some job loss.
Presumably, all of those measures are something that the government should be doing on an ongoing basis, making sure that there's not, repetition, making sure that there aren't overlaps in jobs.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think this seemed more like something that was PR related rather than proper policy. Interestingly, and I think it's likely true if you look on certain Reddit threads where, of course, you can't verify the posters, but Reddit threads related to the BCGU and the public service in BC right now. Some of those people were suggesting that probably these were talking points that were possibly even written by BCGU members who may be on picket lines. The reality is, especially with the Memorandum of Understanding 1 that I believe was renegotiated earlier this year, the vast majority of BCGU members, especially regular members, are not in any way at risk of losing their jobs. Certainly, people who are hired in the last couple of years may be more at risk, and auxiliary employees could be at risk. But it's not even clear that they would lose their jobs so much as maybe just be offered a different position within the public service. I don't think the likelihood is that we are going to see large workforce reductions proper within the public service, and that might be okay. Our public service is not exactly out of line relative to the size of the population with others, but certainly given the implications of any wage increases that are realized by the BCGU on the rest of the public sector because of the province's provincial bargaining mandate, there is not really that much room for the province to negotiate even with its core public service.
Justin, we'll leave it there this morning. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right,
Have a
you
good
take
day.
care. Thank you. That's Justin Wiltshire, who is an assistant professor of economics at the University of Victoria.